Hey, Silent Pages fam. We're starting a new love journey. Tell us where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe. Now stay with us. The story begins. The kitchen felt like a battlefield the first moment Sophia Lane stepped inside it. Heat clung to the tile walls, pans sizzled angrily on every burner, and the air carried that familiar mix of garlic, butter, and panic that only a collapsing restaurant could produce. She stood in the doorway with her notebook tucked under her arm, watching the chaos ripple through the brigade. They weren't failing because they were incompetent. They were failing because the entire place was 2 bad days away from shutting its doors forever. And Ryan Carter looked exactly like a man who knew it. He stood at the center station, moving like a conductor forced to direct an orchestra that kept dropping instruments. His sleeves were rolled up, jaw tense, dark hair sticking slightly to his forehead from the heat. He wasn't handsome in that polished, PR-ready way. He was handsome the way a storm is, too intense to look at for long, dangerous if approached carelessly, impossible to ignore. Order up? No, not like that. The garnish goes clockwise. We've been over this. Ryan barked, grabbing a plate from a flustered line cook and fixing it with surgical precision. His voice cut through the noise, and the staff flinched, not out of fear, but out of the exhaustion of working under a man who refused to let his father's legacy die. This was the restaurant she had been assigned to bury. Sophia's job was simple. Write one final review for her magazine, expose the truth behind the floundering Carter's table, and wrap the story with a clean obituary. A closing headline. A professional hit job. She wasn't supposed to feel sympathy. She definitely wasn't supposed to admire the man fighting alone against bankruptcy, bad suppliers, and the pressure of a board that wanted him gone. But watching him hold the entire kitchen together with nothing but stubbornness and raw skill, it was hard not to. Ryan finally noticed her, a stranger in his war zone, and strode toward her with the controlled urgency of someone who didn't have a second to waste. If you're lost, he said without greeting, the dining room is that way. Staff only in here. Sophia raised an eyebrow. Good. Then I'm exactly where I need to be. That stopped him. For half a second, he scanned her from head to toe. Practical boots, structured coat, expression sharp enough to slice through steel. She looked like trouble. Not the dramatic, screaming kind. The kind that sees everything and writes it down. You're the marketing consultant? He said slowly, clearly unconvinced. She nodded with the confidence of a woman who lied for a living. Though technically, she wasn't lying. Her editor had introduced her as a consultant. Just not in the way Ryan assumed. Marketing, strategy, image repair, she said. Your investors need to see stability if you want that extension. Ryan exhaled sharply, tension tightening across his shoulders. She had struck a nerve. Stability, right, he muttered. Which apparently includes having a partner who backs me. A united front. Someone who looks like they believe in this place. And you don't have one, Sophia finished for him. He didn't deny it. Instead, he stepped aside, gesturing for her to walk deeper into the kitchen, into the heat, the noise, the smell, the heart of everything he was fighting to save. She followed, watching him command the chaos with the desperation of someone clinging to the last beam of a sinking ship. He stopped at the prep counter, lowered his voice, and said, I need a partner. Someone the investors can look at and think, maybe he's not drowning. Someone who can help me prove I can handle this business. You get access to everything, recipes, books, suppliers, whatever. Full transparency. But in return, he hesitated. She could see he hated the next part. You'll need to stand beside me tomorrow and pretend we're building this place together. There it was. The deal. Unexpected, risky, and brilliant. Sophia wasn't here for a partnership. She was here for a story. But this was access. The kind she'd never get if she walked in with a critic's badge. A view inside the machine, not through the dining room window. And besides, something in Ryan's eyes made her pause. It wasn't manipulation. It wasn't vanity. It was a man asking for a lifeline he didn't know how to request. She extended her hand. All right, chef, she said softly. I'll play the part. But I don't do half measures. If we're partners, we commit fully. Ryan stared at her hand, then at her, searching for the catch. There wasn't one, not one he could see. Finally, he took her hand. Warm, strong, calloused from years behind a stove. Deal. And that was how it started. Not with romance, not with sparks, but with a handshake over a stainless steel counter in a kitchen that was falling apart. A partnership built on a lie. One that neither of them knew was about to become the most real thing in their lives. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Ryan's restaurant, casting warm streaks across the bustling kitchen. Pans clanged, flames licked the stovetops, and the sharp aroma of sautéed garlic mixed with the sweetness of simmering sauces. Ryan, ever the perfectionist, moved like a conductor, orchestrating chaos into symphony. Yet, even amidst this orchestrated frenzy, a tension hummed beneath his composed exterior. Investors were breathing down his neck, and one more slip could mean the end of the family legacy. Sophia stood in the corner, notebook in hand, observing him. She had never expected a professional kitchen to feel so alive, so charged with both urgency and artistry. Her eyes flicked over every detail. The precision with which Ryan flipped the pan, the way he adjusted seasoning by instinct, the silent nods he gave his sous chefs. This was a man in his element, and yet there was an edge to him, a subtle exhaustion hiding beneath his meticulous movements. So, today you're going to learn something very basic, Ryan said, finally addressing her, his voice calm, but carrying an unspoken authority. Taste. Everything begins and ends with taste. You can read books, study techniques, even memorize recipes, but if you don't understand the balance, nothing else matters. Sophia nodded, trying to absorb every word. She had agreed to this charade, to pose as a marketing consultant and partner for the sake of accessing the kitchen and observing the restaurant from the inside. It was supposed to be a temporary role, a stepping stone to her final review. Yet now, watching Ryan work, she felt an unexpected respect growing. Here was a man fighting not just for profit, but for the legacy of a craft he clearly loved. He handed her a small bowl of sauce. Taste this, then tell me what's missing. Sophia hesitated, the warmth of the kitchen and the intensity in his eyes making her pulse quicken. She tasted it, trying to suppress the critical reviewer in her and instead focus on the raw elements. It's almost there. A hint more acidity, maybe a touch of salt, she suggested, her tone careful. Ryan's eyes narrowed slightly, not in irritation, but in appraisal. Not bad. You're learning to listen, not just follow. That's rare. The hours unfolded in a rhythm of instruction and correction. Ryan guided her through the delicate folds of pasta, the perfect sear of a scallop, and the subtle dance of seasoning. Sophia, in return, demonstrated a meticulous approach to the numbers that Ryan had been neglecting under stress. She reorganized inventory sheets, calculated margins, and suggested minor adjustments to supplier orders. For the first time, Ryan seemed willing to trust someone outside his usual circle. By mid-afternoon, the two of them were preparing for the first public demonstration, a press luncheon meant to showcase the restaurant's resurgent partnership. They were to play the part of a successful, charming duo, a team of culinary and managerial genius. Ryan coached her on posture, on how to smile without appearing nervous, on how to make casual conversation that seemed effortless. Confidence isn't about knowing everything, he murmured as they rehearsed. It's about making everyone believe you do. When the journalists arrived, the kitchen had transformed from a chaotic workshop into a stage of composed elegance. The aromas and the clatter of pots had given way to a polished rhythm. Ryan guided Sophia through each dish as if it were a dance, and she responded with poise, carefully blending her observations with his instructions. They laughed at the right moments, leaned subtly toward each other, and maintained a harmony that was both practiced and startlingly believable. But beneath the surface, Sophia's instincts began to tingle. As she observed the kitchen staff, she noticed subtle inconsistencies, the way certain ingredients were delivered late, the reluctance of older staff members to embrace new methods. She quietly asked questions, listening to whispered conversations in corners, piecing together fragments of information. It became apparent that the dips in quality she had assumed were Ryan's fault were, in reality, a result of systemic issues, delays from suppliers, outdated procedures, and a few staff members resistant to change. The picture was becoming clearer, and her understanding of the challenges Ryan faced deepened. By the end of the luncheon, the reporters were charmed, their cameras capturing smiles and perfectly plated dishes. Ryan's expression softened only once the journalists had left, the mask of controlled charm falling to reveal a flash of relief. You did well, he said quietly, more to himself than to her. Better than I expected. Sophia allowed herself a small smile, the first genuine one since she had begun this assignment. She realized she was learning more than just recipes or corporate strategy. She was beginning to understand the subtle pressures of preserving a family legacy and the weight of responsibility that Ryan carried every day. And somewhere, between the meticulous plating and whispered numbers, a bond was beginning to form. A bond neither of them fully acknowledged, but one that hinted at the deeper complexities ahead. The evening of the charity gala arrived with a crisp chill in the air, the city skyline glittering through the grand windows of Ryan's restaurant. Crystal chandeliers reflected off polished silverware, and the low hum of conversation from well-dressed patrons filled the dining room. It was an event meant to celebrate generosity, culinary mastery, and, subtly, Ryan's capability as a restaurateur. For Sophia, this was the ultimate test, not only of her ability to play the role of Ryan's partner, but also of her instincts as a critic and investigator. As she stepped into the dining room, her heels clicking lightly against the marble floor, Sophia felt a surge of adrenaline. Ryan moved beside her with that same poised confidence, guiding her with subtle cues: how to stand, where to place her hands, how to greet influential guests without seeming rehearsed. "Remember," he whispered, his eyes scanning the room like a hawk, "this isn't just about appearances. It's about trust. Every word, every gesture counts." The first courses arrived, each played a miniature work of art. Sophia played her role flawlessly, discussing flavor profiles with guests, laughing at the right moments, and showing a keen interest in both the culinary and financial sides of the event. She noticed the sous chefs moving with precision behind the scenes, the waitstaff following the choreography of service, and Ryan navigating each interaction with a careful balance of charm and authority. Yet beneath the surface, something felt off. As she discreetly moved to observe the kitchen from the small service doorway, she caught fragments of conversation from two older chefs who had worked with Ryan for decades. And the shipment didn't arrive on time again. "How are we supposed to maintain the standard when half the ingredients are missing? I told him weeks ago, this new supplier is unreliable. If he doesn't realize, it'll cost the restaurant more than he thinks." Sophia's heart quickened. This wasn't just minor oversight. Someone was intentionally disrupting the flow of ingredients. She filed the information away mentally, noting the urgency. The restaurant's faltering reputation wasn't entirely Ryan's fault. She needed to find out who was behind this before publishing anything or drawing conclusions. Back in the dining room, the tension of the gala was mirrored in subtle glances and cautious smiles. One guest, a high-profile investor, leaned toward Ryan. "I've been hearing rumors about the kitchen's consistency lately. Is everything under control?" Ryan's jaw tightened for just a moment before he smiled, reassuringly. "Absolutely. We've made adjustments. It's all in hand." Sophia noticed the brief flicker of frustration in his eyes. He was defending not just the restaurant, but his own credibility. She realized that the pressure he faced was immense, and her heart, for reasons she wasn't ready to acknowledge, clenched in sympathy. Later, during a lull between courses, she subtly approached the kitchen again, asking questions about deliveries and ingredient sources under the guise of curiosity. One of the younger chefs hesitated before admitting, "Some items keep getting delayed, and a few of the senior staff seem reluctant to follow the new prep methods. It's frustrating." Ryan, noticing her brief absence from the dining room, quickly intercepted her. "Are you okay? Don't wander off during the service." His hand briefly brushed her elbow, a small, grounding gesture. Sophia nodded, but she couldn't shake the gnawing suspicion that something deeper was at play. As dessert was served, Sophia watched Ryan in action, calm, composed, addressing each small crisis with the precision of a seasoned maestro. She realized that part of what she had been critiquing in the kitchen was a symptom of larger issues, a subtle but systematic obstruction from those unwilling to adapt, possibly with their own interests in mind. Finally, as the gala drew to a close and guests began to leave with impressed smiles and congratulatory words, Ryan approached Sophia privately. "You did well tonight," he said quietly. "Better than I expected for your first major public outing. But you noticed, didn't you? Some things aren't what they seem." Sophia met his gaze, her own expression carefully neutral. "I did notice, and I'll figure out what's really going on. Don't worry, you're not in this alone." Ryan's eyes softened, a fleeting moment of vulnerability passing between them. "Thank you," he whispered, before being pulled back into the whirlwind of post-event handshakes and farewells. Walking through the empty dining room afterward, Sophia reflected on the night. She had succeeded in her role, but more importantly, she had seen the first clear signs of sabotage and resistance within the restaurant. The stakes were higher than she had imagined, and the path forward would require both cunning and courage. And as she glanced toward Ryan, still overseeing the final cleanup, she realized that their partnership, fraudulent on the surface, was becoming something far more intricate, intertwined, and dangerously real. The restaurant had emptied out, leaving only the soft hum of the refrigerators and the faint aroma of herbs lingering in the air. Sophia lingered by the pantry, pretending to organize the spice jars, but her real intention was to get closer to the archives. Rows of leather-bound cookbooks, handwritten journals, and old family recipes that Ryan's father had collected over decades. Each book seemed to whisper secrets of the past, secrets Sophia needed to understand both the restaurant's heritage and its current struggles. Ryan appeared quietly behind her, carrying a tray of ingredients for a late-night experiment he called "a dish for no one but ourselves." "I didn't expect you to still be here," he said, his voice low but warm. There was no pretense now, no audience, just the two of them in the glow of the kitchen lights. I wanted to see the archives, Sophia replied, her eyes scanning the rows of journals. There's so much history here, it's impressive. He nodded, placing the tray down. And a lot of pressure. My father expects perfection. Every recipe, every technique has to be flawless. Sometimes I wonder if I'm cooking for the restaurant or for him. Sophia hesitated, seeing the weight behind his words. She had always known that Ryan carried expectations like invisible chains, but hearing it now, in the quiet intimacy of the kitchen, made it almost tangible. Then let's cook for ourselves tonight, she suggested, picking up a mixing bowl. No critics, no investors. Just us. And so they began, hands brushing occasionally as they passed ingredients, laughter punctuating the occasional mistake, the air thick with both the scent of garlic and an unspoken tension between them. Ryan guided her through techniques with patient precision, how to fold a sauce, balance flavors, or adjust seasoning at the last moment. Sophia, in turn, shared insights on presentation and subtle ways to enhance the customer experience, using the same skills she had honed as a critic. As they worked side by side, Ryan spoke more openly than he ever had before. It's not just about the food, he said softly. It's the legacy. My father, he built this restaurant from nothing, but sometimes I feel trapped under the weight of his expectations. I want to innovate, to make it mine, but every decision feels scrutinized. Sophia's heart ached at his vulnerability. She placed a hand briefly on his arm, a gesture meant to comfort, but also acknowledging the closeness that had developed between them. You're not alone, she said gently. And your vision matters, more than anyone else's. The hours passed, and the dish they were creating became more than a simple meal. It was a conversation, a shared story, a reflection of both their strengths and vulnerabilities. They experimented, tasted, adjusted, and tasted again, each small success drawing them closer. At one point, Ryan's shoulder brushed against hers, and the accidental closeness lingered just a moment too long, sending a spark of awareness through both of them. Finally, as they plated the dish for themselves, a quiet silence fell over the kitchen. They stood side by side, gazing at the creation, rich colors, aromatic steam curling upward, a perfect marriage of flavors. And in that moment, the professional facade fell away entirely. I've never had anyone understand this, Ryan admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Cooking, the pressure, even the mistakes. You see it all, and yet you stay. Sophia smiled, a mix of pride and something deeper she wasn't ready to name. Because I want to. And because some things are worth more than a review or a headline. Their hands met briefly over the cutting board, lingering longer than necessary, fingers entwined as the heat of the kitchen mirrored the growing tension between them. For the first time, both acknowledged that their partnership, initially a facade, was shifting into something genuine, something tender, and possibly dangerous, if they allowed themselves to fully feel it. As the night wore on, they cleaned the kitchen together, still side by side, still stealing glances and small touches. The old journals and recipes had given Sophia insight, yes, but more importantly, they had revealed a new layer of Ryan, a man burdened yet passionate, guarded yet capable of opening up. And Sophia, once merely an observer, had become a confidant. By the time the first hints of dawn touched the city skyline, they stood together at the large kitchen window, silent but connected. In that quiet, shared space, both felt the stirring of emotions that neither could yet name aloud, yet both understood. The secret ingredient tonight wasn't in the recipe. It was in the closeness, the trust, and the first fragile spark of something beyond business. Sophia stayed late in the dimly lit office above the bustling kitchen, her laptop screen glowing against the shadows. She had promised herself she would just organize her notes, review a few recipes, but instead her investigation had led her down a darker path. The financial discrepancies she had glimpsed earlier during the public tasting suddenly made sense. This was no ordinary mismanagement. As she cross-referenced invoices, supplier contracts, and payroll records, a pattern emerged. Certain shipments had been deliberately delayed, ingredients misreported, and funds siphoned in small, precise increments. And the most shocking discovery, all of this pointed not to Ryan's incompetence or fatigue, but to someone close, a senior partner, a trusted family member, who had quietly maneuvered behind the scenes to force the sale of the building for their own gain. Every document, every coded entry whispered betrayal. Her heart sank. Ryan had poured years of sweat, creativity, and personal sacrifice into this restaurant, and someone had been quietly undermining him, seeking to profit from his struggle. And she had been blind, caught up in the charm of the kitchen, in the late-night collaboration that had begun to feel dangerously like trust, like partnership, like something more. Then the email pinged. Her editor. The subject line was mercilessly simple. 48-hour deadline. Final review. Sophia leaned back in her chair, running a hand over her face. If she wrote the review as instructed, every detail laid bare, the restaurant would collapse. Ryan would lose everything, his family legacy, his career, perhaps even his faith in people. Yet, if she suppressed the truth, if she shielded him out of personal feelings, she would betray her professional ethics, her credibility, and the standards she had sworn to uphold as a critic. Her thoughts drifted back to Ryan, to the night in the kitchen when he had let her in on the pressures he felt, the shadow of his father and the weight of expectations. How could she reconcile the man she had begun to care for with the objective observer she had promised to be? Hours passed in tense silence, punctuated only by the occasional clatter of dishes from the kitchen below. She mapped out the timeline. Deliveries manipulated, the old partner's intentions to purchase the property, and the subtle sabotage that had eroded not only finances but the morale of the staff. It was elegant in its cruelty, meticulous, and devastating. Sophia felt a pang of guilt and fear. If Ryan found out she knew, would he blame her? Would the fragile trust they had begun to cultivate crumble before it had a chance to grow? She knew she had to act carefully, weighing every action against its potential consequence. Every note she made, every financial irregularity she documented, brought her closer to a moral precipice. Expose the truth and destroy the restaurant, or protect Ryan and risk betraying her vocation. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating, trembling. Each stroke seemed heavier than the last, weighted by both ethical responsibility and emotional conflict. This wasn't just a review. This was a reckoning. Finally, she leaned back, exhaling deeply. The decision had not yet been made, but the reality was undeniable. She could no longer ignore the sabotage. She had to gather irrefutable evidence before acting, to ensure that the right person would be held accountable and Ryan would have a fighting chance. The clock was ticking. 48 hours stood between her and the publication of the review, between truth and ruin, between love and duty. For the first time, Sophia truly understood the stakes. The kitchen below, once a place of creativity and warmth, now felt like the battlefield of loyalties, secrets, and moral dilemmas. And she realized, with a mix of fear and resolve, that she was no longer just an observer. She was a participant in a high-stakes game where every move could change lives. She closed the financial records with a decisive snap. There would be no rushed judgments, no half measures. She would find the saboteur, gather evidence, and, somehow, navigate the fragile line between professional obligation and the burgeoning connection she could no longer deny. But one thing was certain. The next 48 hours would determine not just the fate of the restaurant, but the trust and hearts of everyone involved. The late afternoon sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the restaurant, painting the polished countertops with golden streaks. Ryan had insisted on closing the place for a private dinner, just the two of them. Sophia's heart raced as she followed him through the familiar chaos of the kitchen, now eerily quiet and spotless, every utensil in its place, every dish carefully plated and arranged. He moved with precision, as if orchestrating not only a meal but a moment meant to expose the truths they had both been skirting around. The table was set meticulously, soft candlelight, sparkling glassware, and a centerpiece of fresh herbs that filled the room with a fragrant warmth. Ryan looked at her, his eyes intense yet tender, and for a moment, Sophia felt the weight of all the secrets they carried pressing between them. "I wanted tonight to be just us," Ryan said, his voice low, carrying the kind of sincerity that unsettled and captivated her all at once. "No cameras, no press, no spreadsheets. I need to know that I'm not the only one feeling something real here." Sophia's throat tightened. She wanted to confess, to tell him everything. The true reason she had come into his life, the truth about the critical review, the discoveries she had made. But the words caught in her chest. One wrong admission, one revealing glance, and she could shatter the trust he was offering so openly. He poured 2 glasses of wine, the deep red liquid catching the flickering candlelight, and raised his glass toward her. "To us," he said softly, "and to moments that matter more than the rest of the world." Their first bites of the carefully prepared dishes were punctuated by glances, shy smiles, and the occasional laugh at some shared memory from the busy restaurant floor. Yet beneath the laughter, a tension lingered, an unspoken question of loyalty, honesty, and the fragile line between personal desire and professional duty. Ryan reached across the table and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Sophia," he whispered, "you're my best ingredient. The one I can't replace, the one that makes everything else complete. I don't need perfection. I just need you." Sophia's chest tightened. The warmth in his eyes clashed violently with the cold reality of her mission. She reached into her bag and slid an envelope across the table. I want you to see something, she murmured. Inside was a carefully annotated financial report, rows of figures marked with red and blue highlights, notes about the suspicious transactions and subtle sabotage that had threatened the restaurant. Ryan studied it briefly, his expression unreadable. This is serious, he said. His eyes, however, betrayed more than his words, flickering between concern and the faintest hint of admiration for her diligence. You've uncovered something hidden, haven't you? Sophia nodded, her fingers trembling slightly. There's a risk, a hidden one. But you should know, I'm not your enemy. He leaned back, letting out a slow breath, and for the first time, allowed himself a vulnerable smile. I know, he said quietly. And tonight, I just want us to be here. Just us. Whatever comes next, we face it together. The moment hung between them, fragile yet charged with unspoken feelings. Sophia's heart pounded, caught between confession and protection, love and duty. She wanted to tell him everything, to unburden her conscience, but she couldn't, at least not yet. For now, she had to trust that he would understand, eventually, the choices she had made. The evening stretched on with shared dishes, stories, and the subtle electricity of intimacy. Each course was not just a meal, but a symbol of the delicate dance they were performing, balancing professional responsibilities with personal truths, hidden agendas with growing affection. And as the final dessert was served, a simple plate of chocolate ganache and fresh berries, Sophia realized that the stakes were no longer just the restaurant or the review. They were their hearts, teetering on the edge of revelation and trust. For a fleeting moment, Ryan reached out and held her hand across the table, and Sophia let herself linger there, savoring the warmth of a connection she could neither fully admit nor deny. In that quiet, candlelit room, surrounded by the scents and sounds of the kitchen she had come to respect and love, they both understood one thing clearly. Some truths would have to wait, but some feelings could not. The morning light spilled unevenly into the restaurant, catching dust motes that danced lazily above the countertops. Ryan had come in early, intent on reviewing the preparations for the day, when something out of place caught his eye. On one of the shelves, tucked between stacks of recipe books, lay a small notebook he didn't recognize. Curiosity propelled him forward, but the moment he flipped it open, his heart sank. The pages were filled with sharp, meticulous notes, every word scrutinizing the dishes, the finances, the operations. The tone was critical, almost merciless. Then came the signature at the top of one page, Sophia's name. And with it, the truth hit him like a scorching pan. She wasn't just a marketing consultant undercover. She was the critic, the one tasked with delivering the final, devastating review that could ruin everything he had built. His chest tightened. Every smile, every shared glance, every moment of intimacy from the past weeks now felt tainted, a carefully orchestrated performance designed to soften him, to extract trust, to prepare him for the fall. He felt betrayed, not just professionally, but personally. The warmth of their shared nights, the laughter, the gentle touch during the private dinner, all seemed like illusions, a prelude to a calculated strike. He slammed the notebook shut, the sound echoing through the empty kitchen. All our dishes, all our moments, were just a false seasoning for your final bite. His voice cracked, filled with a mix of anger, disbelief, and heartbreak. Sophia, arriving moments later to continue the day's preparations, froze when she saw him. The usual calm precision in his demeanor had fractured into raw hurt and betrayal. Ryan, wait. Please, I can explain, she pleaded, taking cautious steps toward him. But Ryan didn't wait. His eyes blazed, scanning her face for any trace of truth, any hint of the woman he had come to trust. Explain? You've been planning to destroy me from the start, he shouted, his voice shaking with emotion. All of this, everything we shared, it was a lie. You played me. Sophia's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to tell him the whole story, the discovery of the sabotage, the hidden family member trying to seize the building, the pressures of her deadline. She wanted him to see that she hadn't acted out of malice, but out of duty to her profession and the truth. I'm not your enemy, Ryan, she said, her voice trembling. There's sabotage. Someone's trying to ruin the restaurant. I found evidence, and Evidence? He cut her off sharply, the pain in his eyes almost unbearable. All I see is betrayal. You pretended to care, to be part of this, to be part of me. And it was all a ruse. Sophia stepped closer, desperation making her hands shake. Please listen. I care about you more than you know. This review, this isn't personal. There's someone else, someone trying to destroy everything, and I found it. I wanted to protect you. Ryan's hands clenched into fists, the tension radiating from him. His face was a storm of fury and heartbreak. Protect me? By lying to me? By hiding who you really are? You think hiding the truth makes you heroic, but all I feel is that I can't trust a word you've said. For a long moment, neither moved. The kitchen, once a place of collaboration and laughter, felt alien and cold, filled with the ghosts of moments that now seemed like tricks. Sophia's chest ached, torn between revealing everything and respecting the fragile line she had to maintain to eventually prove the truth. I never wanted to hurt you, she whispered, almost inaudible, her voice breaking under the weight of her guilt and fear. Ryan shook his head, the betrayal too fresh, the wound too raw. I don't know if I can believe you, Sophia. Not now. Maybe ever. As she turned away, feeling the weight of the chasm between them, Sophia knew that the coming days would test them both. The saboteurs still lurked in the shadows, the financial future of the restaurant hung by a thread, and the fragile bond she and Ryan had begun to build teetered on the edge of collapse. Every choice now carried consequence, and the next move she made could either save everything or end it forever. The day after the confrontation, the restaurant felt colder than ever. The warmth of clinking glasses and the comforting aroma of fresh bread seemed to mock Sophia as she moved through the kitchen, her mind spinning with a mixture of guilt, determination, and frustration. Ryan had been distant since the revelation, his smiles gone, his casual touches replaced by a polite but firm professional distance. She felt the weight of the chasm between them pressing down with every step. Sophia knew she couldn't just stand by. If she did, Ryan and the restaurant would pay the price for a sabotage he didn't even know existed. She reviewed the notes she had taken during the past weeks. Inconsistencies in deliveries, subtle manipulations in invoices, and patterns in the stockroom that didn't make sense. Each piece of evidence whispered a single truth. Someone within the family circle or the old partnership was orchestrating this from the shadows, intending to cripple the business for personal gain. She began writing. Not the scathing review that her publication expected, but a careful, neutral article highlighting the challenges and high stakes of running a family-owned restaurant. Her words painted a picture of dedication, the pressures of legacy, and the fragile balance between passion and commerce. She carefully omitted any mention of personal betrayals, crafting a narrative that informed the public without handing her critics the power to destroy the restaurant outright. Meanwhile, Ryan was preparing for the final investor dinner. He moved through the kitchen with the practiced precision of a chef who had spent a lifetime under pressure. Every detail mattered: the plating, the timing, the staff's coordination. Yet behind his calm exterior, tension coiled like a snake. His trust in Sophia had been shattered, and while he admired her intellect and skill, he couldn't shake the suspicion that she might still be playing a double game. Sophia, working quietly in the corner, tried to focus on her own tasks while mentally piecing together the timeline of Sabotage. The kitchen staff, wary of her presence after the recent upheaval, avoided eye contact, whispering behind closed doors. Yet she persisted, knowing that only by connecting the dots could she find the proof Ryan desperately needed. As the afternoon waned, the first signs of the evening's dinner began to take shape. Elegant table settings, glimmering glassware, and carefully choreographed staff movements turned the restaurant into a stage. Investors would arrive soon, and Ryan's performance would need to be flawless. Every error, every hint of instability, could unravel everything. Sophia glanced at him across the room. His posture was impeccable, his attention to every detail meticulous, yet there was an unmistakable hardness in his expression. She wanted to approach him, to offer a word of reassurance, but the memory of his hurt gaze and the sting of betrayal held her back. She could only watch silently, a hidden ally armed with knowledge that could save the day if only she acted carefully. By late afternoon, she had compiled a dossier of subtle clues, documentation, and a record of irregularities in deliveries and inventory. She printed the materials discreetly, knowing she would have to act fast to intervene before the final investor dinner began. The clock ticked relentlessly, each second a reminder that the restaurant's future and her chance to prove herself hung in precarious balance. Finally, as the golden hour light poured through the windows, Sophia allowed herself a moment of resolve. She might have lost Ryan's trust, but she would not lose the restaurant. She would fight silently, strategically, using every piece of evidence she had gathered to protect the man she had come to care for, even if he didn't yet understand her intentions. This was her stand, her intervention in the menu, and she would not fail. The restaurant hummed with anticipation as the investors began to arrive. Crystal chandeliers reflected soft, golden light onto polished wooden tables, each placed meticulously set, with gleaming cutlery and perfectly folded napkins. The air was filled with the faint aroma of seared meats and delicate sauces, a careful prelude to the grand dinner that would determine the restaurant's fate. Ryan moved with controlled precision, overseeing every dish leaving the kitchen, his usual calm tempered by an underlying tension. Every detail mattered, every second counted. Unbeknownst to him, Sophia had returned silently, carrying her dossier and a quiet determination. She had spent the afternoon piecing together the saboteur's plan, noting the subtle misplacements in ingredients and the discrepancies in staff behavior. Her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and resolve. If she didn't act now, all of Ryan's hard work and the restaurant's future could collapse in minutes. The first course was served flawlessly, garnished with a flourish that drew appreciative murmurs from the investors. But as the main course was being prepared, a shadow moved in the kitchen. A familiar figure, a partner with vested interests in taking over the building, attempting to tamper with a key ingredient. Sophia's eyes widened as she recognized the act, her mind racing. Without hesitation, she stepped forward, subtly intercepting the sabotaged ingredient and replacing it with the correct one, her movements almost seamless against the rhythm of the kitchen. Ryan noticed the sudden tension, the unusual timing of the prep, but before he could react fully, Sophia had signaled him. Their eyes met. A silent understanding passed between them. They moved as one, improvising, adjusting seasoning and plating with swift precision. Every second was crucial, every gesture measured. The staff, initially confused by the sudden flurry of coordinated action, followed Ryan's lead, trusting his commands even in the chaos. When the main dishes reached the tables, the investors marveled at the presentation. Each plate was immaculate, every flavor perfectly balanced, a testament to the skill and dedication behind it. Ryan took a deep breath and addressed the room, carefully weaving a narrative that revealed the sabotage attempt without vilifying his staff or destabilizing the evening. He explained the family drama, the hidden struggles of managing a legacy business, and praised the teamwork that had preserved the quality of the meal. The investors listened intently, their initial skepticism replaced by admiration. The combination of transparency, integrity, and the evident skill of the kitchen staff convinced them that the restaurant was not only capable of surviving adversity, but thriving under pressure. They applauded the seamless service, their confidence renewed, and one by one, they agreed to the proposed investment, understanding the value of honesty and resilience in a high-stakes culinary enterprise. As the dinner concluded, Ryan found Sophia quietly observing from the back of the room. He walked toward her, relief and gratitude mingling with lingering tension. She handed him a small folder with her findings, the evidence of the sabotage neatly documented. Ryan looked at her, realizing that despite everything, her intervention had saved the restaurant and, perhaps, rekindled a fragile trust between them. For the first time that evening, he allowed himself a smile. They had faced chaos, deceit, and the weight of legacy together, and emerged victorious. The restaurant was safe, the saboteur exposed, and the bond between them, forged in pressure and secrecy, had begun to mend. The morning after the investors' dinner, the restaurant was unusually quiet. The clatter of dishes and the low hum of ovens had been replaced by a calm anticipation, a rare moment for Ryan and Sophia to finally breathe. Ryan stood near the front window, watching sunlight spill across the polished floors, the reflections dancing over the freshly cleaned counters. His mind replayed the events of the previous night, the sabotage, the improvisation, the teamwork, and now, most importantly, the trust Sophia had shown, risking everything to save the restaurant. Sophia approached silently, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She set one down in front of him, her eyes searching his face. "You look like you finally slept a little," she said softly, a hint of teasing in her tone. Ryan smiled, a real, unguarded smile. "Maybe," he admitted. He paused, the weight of everything hanging between them. Then he took a deep breath, stepping closer. "Sophia, I need to tell you something. Last night, I realized something important. My fear of failure. It made me doubt you, doubt us. And that was wrong. I should have trusted you from the start." Sophia's eyes widened slightly, unsure if he would continue. Ryan reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "I want you to know, I don't want this to be temporary, a convenience for business or appearances. I want you as my partner, in the kitchen, in the business, and in life. I want you to be my permanent sous chef in everything." A quiet smile spread across Sophia's face. Relief, happiness, and a spark of playfulness mixed in her gaze. "I think I've been waiting to hear that," she said softly, her voice steady now. "I believe in you, and in us." They stood there, hands entwined, the weight of past doubts dissolving into a shared understanding. Around them, the restaurant hummed back to life, staff preparing for the day, fresh ingredients lined up, sunlight highlighting the restored elegance of the space. Everything felt new, not just the building, but the possibilities within it. In the weeks that followed, Ryan and Sophia worked side by side to renovate the restaurant fully, incorporating both tradition and innovation. Sophia introduced new systems to ensure transparency in finances and supply chains, while Ryan focused on refining the menu, teaching the staff, and mentoring young chefs. Their partnership, forged under pressure, now thrived in trust and mutual respect. The grand reopening was a celebration, not just for investors and patrons, but for the relationship they had built. Friends, family, and staff watched as they moved effortlessly together in the kitchen, finishing each other's sentences, balancing each other's steps. When they finally paused, surveying the dining room filled with light and laughter, Ryan leaned close to Sophia. All of this, it's ours, he whispered. Sophia nodded, her heart full. Yes, ours, she replied. And in that moment, amid the aroma of freshly baked bread and simmering sauces, amid the gleam of polished counters and happy chatter, they both knew that the restaurant, their love, and their shared dreams were stronger than ever. From that day forward, Ryan and Sophia were not just business partners or culinary collaborators. They were a team in life, building a legacy founded on honesty, passion, and the rare magic of trust. The restaurant thrived, but more importantly, so did they, together. Thank you for listening to the story. Write your thoughts in the comments.